Alhamdulillah wa salat wa salam ala wa rasulullah. We're continuing with this great topic of how Islam is good. And that when we met the last time, we talked about Jihad, the 4 different levels of Jihad that we should all be trying to reach and maintain. You want to be at level 4. What must you do to make it to level 4? Level 4 entails, number 1, continuously learning Islam and its truthfulness. And I have to stress that because not everybody out there who calls themselves teaching Islam is teaching true Islam. Many of them are teaching innovation and deviation. But you have to be consistent in learning the true Islam. Also, you must take what you are learning and implement it in your life every day. In other words, practice what you are learning, put it into practice every day. And also, you must share that knowledge with others. Save your soul and your family. Share it with your family. Share it with your friends. Try to encourage your friends to join the classes here, to join the website, especially those women out there, because a woman gets more blessings learning her religion from her home. And to learn true Islam is a rarity. Listening to lectures on Facebook don't get it because most of those lectures are not based on truth. And listening to a lecture is not the same as learning because you have to have questions, you have to have answers and all that. And then finally, you have to remain firm in doing those things despite what other people say. Well, despite the backlash that you're going to get from the hypocrites and the unbelievers, despite people telling you to not come here, despite people telling you not to keep learning, you have to remain firm. That's level 4. And it's hard to keep that level. As we talked about, because your personal jinn is going to do everything to take you away. If you're a person that has no problem dealing with the backlash, then he'll mess with your intentions. He'll try to get you to do it for the wrong reasons. I'm giving the dawah for the wrong reasons. I want to be famous, or I want to get paid, or I want people to invite me to travel to their country. Am I doing it for Allah or for those reasons? So, again, Islam is good. And it all begins with ourselves. We are constantly engaged in struggle against ourselves to try to maintain true Islam. And we talked the last time about how the Prophet Muhammad plays in this. He should be the role model for each and every one of us. Why? Because he managed to maintain level 4. Despite the trials, despite the backlash that he encountered, he endured these things and maintained level 4. Yes, his faith went up and down, but he never left that level 4 of his jihad. And that's why he's the best example for us. And also, another example for us should be the Prophet's companions. Why? Because no one understood his teachings better than they did. Everybody understand that? This is very important. A lot of people say, what does it mean, Sister Laila, to be Salafi? First of all, Salafi is not a noun, it's a verb. If I tell you that I am Salafi, what I am saying is I am a Muslim. And I am practicing my religion to the best of my ability by holding on to the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the understanding of his companions. Because again, it's crucial that we say with the understanding of those companions, because no Muslim on earth today understands this religion better than they did. Allah tells us that himself, that none was better than they. So in order to live true Islam, in order to be a true believer, you have to have the same understanding of this deen that those companions had. And remember, we talked about how our prophet had his share of enemies. We talked about the last time how every prophet that Allah sent had enemies. This misconception that Muslims have that the Prophet Muhammad was loved by everybody and everybody loved. No, that is not true. He had his share of enemies, just like anyone today who is a person of the truth. You're going to have enemies because Shaitan's going to do everything in his power to stand in the way of the truth. But even though the prophet had his share of enemies, he also had companions. And he also had his share of supporters. For example, Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr, he was the first male, and I say male, to respond to his call. And Abu Bakr was not a poor man. He was a wealthy man. And he supported the prophet in spreading the true words of Allah. And also he supported him with his wealth. Remember we talked about jihad? Jihad can be done physically, and it can also be done with your money. Donating to keep this website on the internet. That's jihad with your wealth. Well, Abu Bakr was just like that. He donated. He gave the funds to help the prophet in his call to the truth. In fact, some of the early companions, such as Uthman, who became the third caliph, he embraced Islam through the hands of Abu Bakr. Also Talha and Saud. Remember? Saud. So Abu Bakr was the first male to respond to the call of the Prophet Muhammad, and he supported him and helped him in his dawah efforts. And even women, like I say, women were there in the beginning too. In fact, the first person to respond to the call was Khadijah, who was the wife of the prophet. In fact, not only was she the first female, but she was the first person, period. She was the first person to embrace Islam. And she was the strength behind the prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam first received the call, he was afraid. He ran home, and it was his wife Khadijah who comforted him. It was his wife Khadijah who calmed him down. It was his wife Khadijah who told him, "You're not crazy. You're not having a nervous breakdown." In fact, she was the one that took him to her cousin, who was a monk, who told the prophet, "No, that was not a jinn that came to you in that cave. Instead, it was the angel Jibril." Subhanallah. So again, women played a role too from the beginning. The prophet had women to support him and help him too. Okay? So don't let people think because you're a woman, you're less than anything and you can't help in the cause. No. Khadijah, who was the wife of the prophet, was one of the biggest contributors to the cause. Also, among others who helped the cause was Ali. Remember Ali? He was the cousin of the prophet. Not only was he his cousin, but he also became his son-in-law. And guess what? Ali was only 8 years old when he embraced this way of life, which goes to show age has no play in this either. Sex has no play in it, and neither does age. Ali was under the guardianship of the prophet. The prophet had taken him into his house to raise, to help his uncle out during the year of drought. And when Ali reached the age of puberty, the prophet married him to his daughter Fatima. Okay? That's what they used to do back then. You know, adoption is haram, but they would sponsor. They would take in children who had no one to care for them, And when the child reached the age of puberty, either they would marry the child to, if it was a boy, they would marry him to one of their daughters, or if it was a girl, the man would marry her himself. Okay? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Ali to his daughter Fatima when he reached puberty. And he was one of the first to help with the cause of Islam. Also, another companion who hastened to embrace Islam was Zayd ibn Haritha. Now, we talked about how sex and gender has nothing to do with it. Neither does age. Well, neither does status either. Zayd was a slave. He was a slave given to the Prophet before he received the call to the truth by his wife Khadijah. This is before the Prophet received the revelation. Khadijah gave Zayd to the Prophet to raise as a son because their sons that they had died. And when Zayd was given to the Prophet, Zayd's father and his uncle found out about it. And they came to try to buy him back. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave Zayd the choice. He said, if you want to go with your real father and your uncle, then you can. But if you want to remain with me, you can remain with me. Zayd chose to stay with the Prophet. And so thus the Prophet raised him as his own son until Allah sent down the prohibition against adoption. Adoption is haram. Allah says in the interpretation, the meaning, call them by the names of their fathers. That is more just with Allah. So Allah outlawed adoption. Okay? But before the Prophet received the revelation, Zayd was a slave who the Prophet had adopted to raise as his own son. And he played a crucial role in the establishment of our way of life. And so thus, guys, yes, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a lot of enemies. As he got up and called the people to the truth, he was met with opposition from the hypocrites. He was met with opposition from the unbelievers and the pagans, but he remained firm. He continued to operate at level 3 in his personal struggle. And eventually the people began to enter Islam one after another. And as he continued to remain firm in his mission. But guess what? Just as we talked about, just because we say we believe in Allah is not enough. Allah wants us to prove it. As the people began to enter more and more into Islam, the hardships and the persecutions increased. This was Allah's way of testing the faith to see how many of them were sincere and how many of them were not. In the beginning, when the Prophet was in Mecca calling to the truth, the companions remained so firm. Those who were with him in Mecca, Bilal, Zayd, Ali, they remained so firm in the beginning because Allah did not allow them to fight back. They had to take the persecution of the Quraysh. They had to take the ridicule and the physical punishment afflicted upon them without fighting back. In fact, they went through so much abuse that when the Prophet saw his followers being punished, he would say, just be patient. Have patience. Don't give in, because remember, you are promised a home in paradise. So they took all the physical abuse in Mecca while keeping their eye on that target of paradise. And this is the state of the Muslims today. No wonder why so many of them lose their way. Because Allah is sending trial after trial to us to see how many of us truly believe in Him. Remember, Allah tells us, do you think just because you say that you believe that you won't be tested? Remember, the trials that we are engaging in are a means of teaching us patience. Unfortunately, guys, most of us fail the test. Most of us fail the test. You got women who take off their hijab and don't cover up anymore. Men who shave their beards and don't grow them anymore. Well, those companions were better than us. They remained firm. They remained patient. They didn't give in, and they were physically persecuted for their beliefs. Okay? But also, guys, remember we talked about each and every one of us are in different levels of closeness with Allah. Because some of us are stronger than others. None of us are equal. We're all in different levels of strength. And Allah knows His creation. Allah knows that not all of us can handle trials. Okay? So that's when Allah sent down the command while the Muslims were in Mecca, saying that those who were not strong enough could migrate to another part of the world to practice their religion and be free of the persecution. And one of those people was the prophet's daughter. The prophet's daughter, he had a daughter who could not endure the punishment, the cruelty. So the prophet told Uthman, who he married her to take her away. Take her away to this other part of the world, so she wouldn't have to endure the pain and suffering that we're having to endure here in Mecca. So that shows the wisdom of Allah. Allah knows that not all of us can handle pressure. So Allah sent down a command ordering that the Muslims could migrate, and that's when they migrated to the land of Ethiopia. Many of them did, including Uthman with the prophet's daughter. Ethiopia was not a Muslim country. Ethiopia was a land ruled by a Christian king who was known as being a just man. So that proves right there's nothing wrong with migrating to a Kafir land. As long as you can practice your religion openly, you can move anywhere on this earth. There's a lot of people that try to tell you that you have to live in Saudi Arabia in order to be a Muslim. Can you imagine all Muslims fitting in Saudi Arabia? Or you have to move to any Muslim ruled land. No, you can live anywhere on this earth. The earth belongs to Allah. He made it a place for each and every one of us. You can live anywhere on this earth as long as you are able to practice your religion openly. Okay? So Allah sent down the command in the beginning because He knew that not all the Muslims could endure the calamities. He sent down the command saying that some of them can migrate. And so one of the first to migrate was Uthman, and he took with him his wife Ruqayya, who was the daughter of the prophet, because Ruqayya was one that couldn't take all that fitna. And when did this happen? This migration occurred 1 month after the prophet had received the revelation. See how quick Allah is? They didn't have to suffer too long. Allah sent that revelation down 1 month after the prophet, had received the call to the truth. Okay? So those who couldn't endure, they migrated to the Christian land of Ethiopia. And they did not come back until they heard that everything was better. So what do we learn from this experience? Well, number one, you learn from this experience with those companions that Allah does not place a burden on us that is too great for us to bear. Just when you think that you can take no more, Allah will always send relief. Okay, the prophet's daughter Ruqayya was amongst one of those who couldn't take all that. She went through it for a month. Then Allah sent relief, saying, okay, you guys can migrate. So how does that help us? Yes, all of us, we're striving to maintain level 4 of Jihad. It's not easy. We're going to be tested with the things we love the most, our families, our websites. You're going to be slandered. You're going to be ridiculed. People are going to try to pull you away from the truth. But understand that you can handle it. If you couldn't, Allah wouldn't have given it to you. Secondly, we learn that practicing Islam is a must. And if you are prevented from doing so, then it becomes incumbent for you to move someplace else. You don't apostate. For example, you live in Atlanta. Say all the Muslims there are making fun of you because you choose to follow the Sunnah. You're wearing hijab. You're staying away from things Allah commanded. But it seems like you are not content in none of the communities there. So you decide, well, I'm going to move. I'm going to move someplace else. Let me move to Ohio. Or let me move to New York. Or let me move to Seattle, Washington, because I heard they have a nice community there. Again, you have to practice true Islam. You do not allow the hypocrites and the unbelievers to pull you away from that truth. You're trying to maintain level 4. You have to maintain that level. If it's hard where you live, then move somewhere else. And again, you learn that you don't have to move to a Muslim land either. You can move anywhere on this earth as long as you're free. You don't have to go to Saudi Arabia. In fact, you might find it harder to practice Islam there because you'll see more innovation and deviation there than you do here in America. So you move someplace that you can be comfortable, that you can relate to, and still be able to practice your deen. You learn that all from what those companions experienced. Okay? So thus, guys, again, living Islam is a must. In order to be a true believer, you have to maintain that level 4 of jihad. It's hard to do. But Allah has given us the tools that can help us in that. We have the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we also have the example and the understanding of his companions. Because again, calling to and living the life of Islam is not an easy task. There will be enemies. Enemies amongst the Muslims and enemies amongst the non-Muslims that will stand in your way and try to pull you away. Look on Facebook. Those Muslims trying to tell you to stop coming to this website. Those are enemies trying to pull you away. Those kafirs calling you a fanatic. Those are enemies trying to pull you away. And also, you're going to have trials to overcome. You're going to be dealing with your family, your husband acting crazy. Your children acting crazy. But you must never give up hope. To maintain level 4, you have to be persistent and never quit the fight. And you should always keep in mind that the end result is what matters. And what is the end result? What are we living for? Paradise. That's the end result. You were created to worship Allah. You were put here to be tested with your health, your money, your children, your family, with the things you care about the most, to see if you are deserving of that great reward known as paradise. Keep that in mind, because that'll give you the motivation that you need. Just like when the Prophet saw his companions being beaten and punished because of their belief, he would walk past them and give them the word, remain firm. Remain true, because the end result is paradise for you. And they would sit there and take it. Okay, thank you, oh prophet, I can handle this. And they bore the persecution. Learn from that, because our persecution is nothing like what they went. That was physical abuse they went through. You're going through mental, psychological, and emotional. It's not the same. Okay? So on that note, we'll stop right here for today. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you a quiz on this. Not only am I teaching you how to maintain level 4 in your personal struggle, but I am also giving you a lesson in history of the Prophet and his companions too. You're learning about him as a leader, as a friend, a husband, a caller, and you're learning about his companions. You learned a little bit today about Ali. You learned a little bit today about Abu Bakr. You learned about Zayd. You learned about Khadijah. These classes are very important, guys. Try to call more Muslims to this because, again, I am trying to teach you, not just lecture you. There's a big difference. On that note, we'll stop right here for today. Sunnah followers. Protect yourself.